What if I told you that a retired police officer drove around town with dismembered body parts in his car, even stopping at the police station, and nobody knew? What if I told you that a mother's worst nightmare came true when she found out her daughter's body was cut into pieces and scattered across a city, with some parts never to be found again? This is the story of Ashley Young, a bright college student whose trust in a friend led to one of the most horrifying crimes you'll ever hear about. And trust me, by the end of this video, you'll understand why this case shook an entire community to its core. But before we dive into this disturbing story, make sure you hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications because we cover the most shocking true crime cases that will leave you speechless. And if you're brave enough to stick with me through this entire story, leave a comment at the end telling me what you think should have happened to everyone involved in this case. Now let's get into it. Ashley Young was the kind of person everyone wanted to be around. She was 31 years old, living in Kalamazoo, Michigan, and she had this infectious personality that just drew people in. Her mother, Christine, describes her as kind, loving, caring, and someone who would go without just to help somebody else. Ashley was in college, meeting new people, enjoying life, and she had this beautiful relationship with her mom. They talked all the time. Christine knew her daughter's schedule, her habits, her routines. So when Ashley suddenly stopped responding to calls and texts one day, Christine knew immediately that something was terribly wrong. You know that feeling in your gut when you just know something isn't right? That's what Christine felt. And she was about to discover that a mother's intuition is very, very real. It all started on a Wednesday night in November. Ashley had plans to meet up with someone she considered a friend. His name was Jared Chance, and here's where things get complicated. Jared wasn't exactly someone Christine approved of. Years earlier, Jared had broken into Ashley's apartment and stolen her computer, money, and prescription medication. Yeah, you heard that right. This guy had literally burglarized her daughter, and yet Ashley had decided to give him a second chance. Christine had even confronted Ashley about him, telling her that Jared was no good, but Ashley had this beautiful, naive belief that there was good in everyone and that everyone deserved a second chance. It's heartbreaking to think about now, isn't it? Sometimes the very quality that makes someone beautiful, their ability to see the good in people, is the same thing that puts them in danger. So on that Wednesday night, Ashley drove up to Grand Rapids, about 50 miles north of Kalamazoo, to hang out with Jared at his apartment on Franklin Street. They went to a local bar called Mulligan's, and then they stopped at a place called the Pita House right next door. Surveillance footage from that night shows them together, and honestly, if you watched that video without knowing what was about to happen, you'd just think they were two young people having a good time on a night out. You can clearly see Ashley in the footage because she was wearing these very distinctive knee-high black boots. The video shows Jared walking ahead of her, and then about 45 seconds later, Ashley follows him. You can see them talking in the parking lot, laughing, just looking like any other young couple enjoying their evening. Nobody watching that footage would think that within hours, one of them would be dead and dismembered. Now here's where Christine's mother's intuition kicks in. The next day, Thursday, Christine tried to reach Ashley. No answer. She tried again. Nothing. By Friday morning, Christine was in full panic mode. This wasn't like Ashley at all. Ashley always responded to her mom. Always. Christine started calling everyone, checking with friends, and that's when she found out that Ashley had been with Jared. And when Christine learned this information, she was livid. She immediately tried to contact Jared, and listen to what she did. She left him a voicemail, and it was not nice at all. She said, and I quote, "Hello Jared, my name is Christine Young. I'm looking for my daughter. She was last with you. Is she with you? She needs to contact me. Tell her that I'm going to contact the police department to do a missing person report." Some people said Christine threatened him in that voicemail, but Christine says those weren't threats, those were promises. And honestly, can you blame her? When Jared finally called Christine back, he had this whole elaborate story prepared. He said Ashley had lost her phone and left it at a hookah lounge. He said she went to get it, and was heading back to Kalamazoo because she had to work third shift. But here's the thing, Ashley worked first shift, not third shift. Jared was lying, and not even lying well. He was making up stories that didn't make any sense, and these inconsistencies painted a very clear picture of someone who was desperately trying to get Christine to look anywhere but where Ashley actually was. Then Jared told Christine that Ashley was with someone named Demetrius. Christine asked, "Who is that?" She decided to play along, to see what would happen. So she called this Demetrius person, and guess what he said? "I don't know an Ashley. I've never met your daughter." Demetrius had no idea what she was talking about. And the very next thing that happened was Jared texted his buddy Demetrius saying, and pardon my language here, but basically, "You just effed me over. I'm effed now. Thanks." You see, Jared had told Demetrius to cover for him, to tell Christine that Ashley had been there and had just left, but Demetrius hadn't read the text yet when Christine called him. Jared's entire story was falling apart. By Friday morning, Christine called the state police. She filed a missing person report, even though the police initially weren't too concerned. You have to understand, from law enforcement's perspective at first, this was just an adult daughter who hadn't called her mom back. That's not a crime, and technically it's not even a missing person case yet. But Christine wasn't backing down. By Saturday, she told her family, "We need to go. We need to go to Grand Rapids. We need to go to his house. We need to go find her car." The Kalamazoo police weren't doing anything, so Christine decided she needed to do it herself. She started posting on social media, putting pressure on everyone, trying to get answers about her daughter's whereabouts. This was a true grassroots effort driven by a mother who refused to give up. And here's where the story takes an even more twisted turn. Jared's father, James Chance, was a police officer for over 20 years. He knew that Ashley's mom was looking for Ashley because social media was buzzing with the story. So on Sunday morning, James came into the Grand Rapids Police Department with Jared, and he told the desk officer, "We need to talk to some detectives." The lieutenant came out and asked why they needed to speak with detectives. James said, "Well, they're trying to harass my son on Facebook. They're saying that he was the last one with this young lady that's missing. You'll want to talk to my son, but he needs an attorney." The lieutenant explained, "We don't have attorneys here. You have to get your own attorney, your own representation." And this is where James Chance became visibly upset. He started pointing at the officer, waving his arm, and he said something to the effect of, "You're making a big mistake then." And then he and Jared just turned around and walked out. Keep this moment in mind, because what I'm about to tell you next will make your blood run cold. At that exact moment when James Chance was at the police station yelling at officers and acting like his son had done nothing wrong, Ashley Young's dismembered arms and legs were sitting in a box in the back of James Chance's car, parked right outside that police station. Let that sink in for a moment. But the family didn't know any of this yet. What happened next is what finally broke the case wide open. On that same Sunday, a neighbor who lived in the apartment below Jared's place called 911. His name was Mario Nelson, and what he discovered would haunt him forever. Mario told the dispatcher, "I've been having a real bad feeling. For the last couple of days, our apartment has had this real bad smell. I went down to the basement to check the pipes, thinking maybe there was sewage that flooded or something. There's a tarp at the end of the stairs. I stepped over it at first, but when I came back, I was shining my flashlight, and it looks like some blood is leaking from underneath it. And I'm not going to touch it because I don't want to lift that thing up and see what's under there." The dispatcher asked if he touched the tarp, and Mario said, "No way. I'm not going down there to look at that. That's why I'm calling you." When police arrived at the scene, they started talking to the neighbors, getting information. Mario told them that he thought Jared might have had something to do with it, and that Jared was still upstairs in the apartment. Mario also mentioned that Jared had a gun, which made the situation even more tense. The police asked Mario if he had seen the missing girl, and Mario said yes, he had seen her a couple of days ago when Jared invited him upstairs to smoke. He described seeing a white female, kind of chubby, with brownish red hair. She was wearing a white sweater, black leggings, and brownish-colored boots. Mario said she seemed pleasant and didn't seem to be in any distress at all. When police asked if Mario saw her leave, he said no, he left first and never saw her leave after that. Mario also told police something else that was crucial. He said that about 2 days after seeing the girl, Jared came down and asked Mario for help. Jared said the keys were locked inside a Ford Focus, and he needed Mario to help him get the door open. Mario helped him, and when he looked inside the car, he noticed it was really messy. Then, just a couple of days before calling 911, Jared had sent Mario a text message saying, "If somebody comes looking for me, don't tell them I'm here." The body cam footage from the officers shows them going down into the basement. There are no lights, and the officers are clearing the area with their flashlights. And almost immediately, they see a large canvas bag at the bottom of the stairs. You can clearly see blood trails trickling out of that bag. One of the officers leans down, and there's a small opening in the canvas bag. The officer looks inside and says, "I can see some skin in there." He immediately tells everyone to back out, and the officers clear back up the stairs. At that moment, all they knew was that there was probably a human body inside that bag. The neighbor, Mario, was told it was a crime scene, and he asked the officer, "I know you probably can't tell me, but is that a body?" The officer just confirmed it was a crime scene. When Christine got the news, she was with some of Ashley's friends. One of them sent her a text saying, "Please tell me that's not her." Christine texted back, "What are you talking about?" "I don't know what you're talking about." Her friend replied, "The body. They found a body at his house and it's a female." Some of Ashley's friends were there, and they came up to Christine and hugged her and said, "I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry." And Christine kept saying, "It's not Ashley. It can't be Ashley." She kept telling the police lieutenant that there was one identifying piece that would tell them if it was Ashley. She said, "Her eyes. No one else will have her eyes." And the lieutenant said something that no mother should ever have to hear. She said, "We have no identifying parts." Think about what that means. No head. No hands. No feet. Nothing that could immediately identify who this person was. Christine said later that she wanted to run to see if it was her daughter because she could have identified her. But if it was her, she just wanted to get to her. She just wanted to hold her daughter one more time. The police special response team made their way up to Jared's apartment. They found him inside. It appeared that he had been sleeping. The apartment itself was in complete disarray. There were things strewn everywhere, and there was a very odd stain on the kitchen floor. It was a couple feet long, and there was white powder all over the floor, likely some kind of cleaning agent. So let me tell you what police recovered from that apartment and the basement. They recovered a torso in the basement. They recovered female boots, the same distinctive boots Ashley was wearing in the surveillance footage. And then the most disturbing piece of evidence was a brown Amazon box. Inside that box were Ashley's arms and her legs. But not the hands. Not the feet. The head was also missing. Obviously, right from the start, their primary suspect was Jared. He was taken into custody and brought down to the police department for an interview. In the interview room, detectives tried to talk to Jared. They told him they appreciated the fact that he came into the police department earlier that day, and they were sorry he got turned away. Jared responded by saying he just came in because he read on Facebook that the last person Ashley was with was him, so he was concerned and trying to get some information about it. But then he said his dad told him to ask for the advice of an attorney because he didn't know what was going on. He said, "I don't want to sit here and talk about things that may incriminate me or whatever in any kind of way because I don't know what's going on. So I just don't want to say nothing right now." He immediately asked for an attorney, so the questioning stopped after just a couple of minutes. Jared wasn't giving them any indication of what happened, and remember, they didn't have a head, they didn't have hands, and they didn't have feet. The coroner said he couldn't make a definite identification without the head, so there was an immediate sense of urgency to find the rest of Ashley's remains. Detectives started by getting search warrants for Jared's credit card records so they could retrace his steps. What they found was chilling. Jared visited a local convenience store called Miss Tracy's multiple times over the next day and a half after Ashley's murder. Sometimes he used cash, sometimes he used a card. He was on video buying ammonia multiple times. The surveillance footage also showed Jared walking across the street early in the morning and discarding items into a trash bin in front of the store. It looked like an orangish-colored bag. When police went into that garbage bin, they found latex gloves, a pair of Jared's pants, Ashley's purse, and her ID. The pants had her blood on them. Jared even had his name tag sewn into the pants, making it incredibly easy to identify them as his. When you start looking at what he was buying at Miss Tracy's, particularly the ammonia, and then you look at his apartment, it becomes pretty evident that Ashley was murdered in the kitchen and then dragged about 10 to 15 feet and put into the bathtub. And that's where Jared did the gruesome job of dismembering her body. Detectives also pulled cell phone records. Everyone has cell phones, right? So one of the first things detectives do in a case like this is get those call records. Then they can start to figure out where Jared was, where he went. And they noticed something interesting. They saw that Jared went to Holland, Michigan. Why would he go to Holland? Well, his mom and dad lived in Holland. Once they realized his parents lived there, they went back the next day with a search warrant. Mr. and Mrs. Chance were home at the time, sitting on their three-season porch in the back. And the biggest piece of evidence that police found was a reciprocating saw that was underneath the couch in the living room. That's exactly the type of tool you would use to cut through long bones. As gruesome as it is, you could clearly see there was flesh and hair stuck in that saw. DNA testing confirmed it was Ashley's remains. At this point, investigators knew that James Chance had been a police officer for several years before he retired and moved to Holland. When they found the evidence they found at his house, they were convinced that James, his wife Barbara, and probably their other son Conrad had knowledge of what happened. Investigators learned that several items were carried out of Jared's apartment and placed into Mr. and Mrs. Chance's vehicle. Security footage and witness statements revealed they were literally loading the Amazon box with Ashley's arms and legs into it, along with a nasty-smelling mop and bucket filled with gloves. The stench in that vehicle must have been absolutely horrific. No rational human being would smell that and think, "Oh, I guess nothing's going on here." But the Chance family drove all around town with these items in their car. They went to the police station, where James yelled at the officers. They went to Costco to do some shopping. Then they went back to Jared's house, dropped him off, and gave him back the box of evidence. They clearly became people that investigators wanted to talk to. When detectives finally interviewed them, James and Barbara were not cooperative whatsoever. They claimed this was atrocious, that they didn't commit the crime, their son did, and they didn't help him. Barbara said it sounded almost like communism the way they were being treated. But investigators weren't buying it. During the interview with Barbara, after she was reminded that lying in a homicide investigation carries a life sentence for perjury, she finally started talking. She said that when Jared was at her home, he came upstairs crying and said there was an accident. Barbara claims Jared told her that he and Ashley had been drinking and they were playing with a gun and the gun went off, shooting Ashley in the face. When Barbara asked who was holding the gun when it went off, Jared allegedly told her that Ashley was holding it, that she pointed the gun at herself and shot herself in the face. Barbara said Jared told her, "I would never kill anybody. She was my friend." But here's the thing, even if you believe that story, which is highly questionable, what Jared did next is absolutely inexcusable. Instead of calling 911 or trying to get Ashley help, instead of staying with her and trying to provide first aid, he panicked. And then he made the decision to dismember her body and scatter the parts around the city to try to get rid of the evidence. Barbara admitted that Jared told her he cut the body up and that it sounded like he distributed the parts all over. She said Jared told her about the hands and feet, but she claimed she didn't know about the head. The interview with James Chance was equally disturbing. He played the role of a doddering old man who couldn't remember things clearly. But detectives weren't having it. They knew James remembered details when it was convenient for him. During the interview, James made several slips. He started to say that Jared pointed the gun, but then quickly corrected himself and said she pointed the gun at herself. The detective caught this and pointed it out, saying, "You just said he pointed and then you stopped yourself." James tried to make excuses for why he misspoke, but it was very obvious that he had used the word he instead of she, suggesting that Jared had actually pointed the gun at Ashley. James became angry during the interview, saying that he was a victim too and that he was offended he'd been charged with a felony because of the way the system was set up. Remember that anger he displayed at the Grand Rapids Police Department on Sunday morning when he was yelling at officers? It was all calculated to show that Jared hadn't done anything wrong. But now we know that at that exact moment, Ashley's dismembered limbs were in his car parked outside. According to Barbara's statement, after they left the police department that day, they took the items from the back of their Honda, which she claimed not to know what they were because she didn't want to know, and brought them back to Jared's house. When asked about the smell, Barbara admitted there was a bad smell. She's in the medical field, so the detective asked her if it smelled like remnants of a body, like blood, and she said it was stinky, like a mop. But come on, she knew. She had to have known. This was a family affair. His mom, his dad, they all played a role in the cover-up of this terrible crime. And that's why all three of them ended up facing charges. Now, before Ashley's remains were even identified, something unusual happened. A reporter named Heather Walker from Wood TV8 requested a jail internet visit with Jared Chance. Usually when reporters do this, the person hangs up immediately. But Jared Chance stayed on the line and continued to talk. The reporter asked him, "You were friends with Ashley. She seemed like a lovely girl, a bright girl. What went wrong? Were there drugs involved?" And remember, this is before Ashley's remains were officially identified. Jared responded, "Well, something went wrong because her body was found in pieces." For a second, it seemed like he was actually going to tell them some information about where her remains were or why he did it. The reporter asked what he told his parents about this, and whether his dad turned him into the police. Jared suddenly said, "I can't do this. I can't do this. I'm sorry. I can't do this right now." And he hung up. After he hung up the phone, he just sat there as if he was really thinking about everything he did. He was acting like he wanted to give information and then stepping back saying he didn't want to incriminate himself. He kept saying, "I don't know what to say. I just don't know." Well, you know what? I think he didn't know what to say because his daddy wasn't there telling him what to say. When the trial began, there was already controversy. Jared had been offered a plea deal that would have required him to explain what happened to Ashley Young, but he passed on it. Christine was furious because she didn't want to offer that piece of garbage anything, and she didn't want to listen to him say things like, "Oh, she did it. She committed suicide." She knew that was complete nonsense. Throughout the entire trial, every time Jared was in court, he was an absolute blank wall. He sat with zero emotion. It was very disturbing to watch. The prosecution faced a challenge. Ashley's death was labeled a homicide, but they didn't have evidence to support first-degree murder. They couldn't prove with evidence that it was premeditated. So they proceeded to trial under a theory of second-degree murder. The prosecutor told the jury they had 260 exhibits and over 20 witnesses. He described the brown cardboard box found with the women's boots beside it, and inside that box, wrapped up, were 2 arms and 2 legs with no hands and no feet. He said it's horrible enough to take another individual's life, but then to cut through their flesh, cut through their spine to remove their head, to take off the lower legs and the ankles, to take off the feet, these are actions that no normal sane human does. The medical examiner testified that whatever killed Ashley killed her from the neck up. There were no wounds on her torso, no wounds on her arms or her legs that would have caused her death. It was most likely blunt force trauma to the head, or a gunshot to the head. The defense attorney argued that just because somebody mutilates a corpse doesn't mean that they made the person a corpse. He told the jury their job was to think critically and to make the state prove beyond a reasonable doubt that Jared committed second-degree murder. He said at the end of the day, there was zero evidence that Jared caused Ashley's death. But the prosecution had plenty of evidence to present. Christine Young took the stand, and she was one of the strongest people anyone in that courtroom had ever seen. She was forced to sit there on multiple occasions with the person who murdered and dismembered her daughter. When she took the stand, she came across as heartbroken but also angry. She told the jury about Ashley, how kind she was, how loving, how infectious her personality was. She said everybody wanted to be around her, that she was caring and giving, that she would go without to help somebody else. Christine also testified about the voicemail she left for Jared and the conversations she had with him where he lied repeatedly about where Ashley was. Conrad, Jared's brother, was also called to testify. He was very reluctant to say anything about his brother, but he told the jury about an incident that occurred just days before Ashley was murdered. He said that one night when Jared and Ashley came home, Conrad was there, and they were all smoking weed together. Conrad testified that Jared took out a gun and pointed it at him, making a motion like he was pulling the trigger. He said Jared made no effort to check if the gun was loaded, made no effort to check if the safety was engaged. He just picked up the gun and started clicking the trigger while pointing it at Conrad. Ashley's reaction was to say, "You're never supposed to do that." This testimony was crucial because it showed Jared's reckless behavior with firearms and his complete disregard for safety. Mario Nelson also testified, and without him, Ashley's body might never have been found. Jared would have likely gotten away with this crime. Mario not only discovered Ashley's remains, but he also gave some pretty critical evidence about Jared's state of mind before the murder. Mario testified that a couple of weeks before Ashley was killed, he had seen Jared with a .22 revolver, and Jared was telling him that he could get away with murder. Jared told Mario that his dad used to be in the Irish mob and that he knew how to clean up blood and things like that if he ever got into a situation. While watching Jared handle the gun, Mario said he felt uncomfortable to say the least. He said it made him nervous because he knew what a gun was capable of, and even though he knew Jared, he didn't know what Jared was capable of. In his closing argument, the prosecutor stood before the jury holding the reciprocating saw that was found at James and Barbara Chance's house. He said, "Look at the person to your right and imagine that they suddenly die. If you had nothing to do with their death, would you take this saw and saw their head off? Would you take this and saw their arms off and their legs and their hands and their feet? And then would you proceed to get rid of all of this evidence if you had nothing at all to do with their death?" He told the jury that nobody would do that. Only someone who caused that death would go to such extreme lengths to cover it up. The defense argued that there was heaps of evidence presented, but the one question remained unanswered. Did Jared Chance actually cause Ashley's death? They pointed out that there was no evidence of an argument breaking out. The surveillance video showed them having a good time. But the prosecution's argument was simple and powerful. The evidence of what Jared did after Ashley died proved his guilt beyond any reasonable doubt. The jury began their deliberations, and a couple hours later, they came back with their verdict. When it was read, the courtroom fell silent. "We, the jury, find the defendant Jared Chance guilty of second-degree murder, guilty of tampering with evidence, guilty of mutilation of a dead body, guilty of concealing the death of an individual." Jared would be remanded without bond, and sentencing was set for October. When that sentencing day arrived, what happened in that courtroom was one of the most emotional moments anyone had ever witnessed in a court of law. Christine Young showed up with her daughter's remains. She stood in front of the judge holding the box of ashes while she delivered her victim impact statement. She said, "This is what's left of my daughter. If I want a hug, I have to hug a box, close my eyes, and pretend that she is hugging me back." Christine's statement to Jared during his sentencing was devastating. She said, "Jared Chance, I hate you. I want to rip you limb from limb and discard you like trash like what you did to Ashley. You do not deserve to breathe. Ashley was your friend. She was your friend. You chose to execute her. You chose to dismember her. You chose to scatter her remains, This was Christine's only child, and to not know exactly where the rest of her daughter is, it was unbearable. Christine continued, "You will never tell me where she is because you like to torment people. You like to hurt them. You enjoy it. I cry 7 days a week. 7. My mind never stops. Never. I am left with nothing but voicemails and videos that I play over and over just to hear her voice, just to hear her laugh. But we will not let her spirit die. She is always with us. The one thing you are never going to take from us is Ashley's spirit." The judge thanked Christine and said he was very sorry for her loss. Then he turned to Jared and said, "You are clearly a monster without any conscience whatsoever, and you are someone who is a danger to society and should never be allowed free." The judge sentenced Jared to serve a minimum of 100 years to a maximum of 200 years in the Michigan Department of Corrections. The judge said, "I am purposely doing this so that you will not be eligible for parole until you are at least 130 years old. In other words, Jared Chance will die in prison. He will never walk free again." As for the parents, Barbara ended up pleading guilty to her charges. James went to trial, and the jury was hung on one count of perjury, but he was found guilty of being an accessory after the fact. They both received prison sentences for their roles in helping their son cover up this horrific crime. You know, this case raises so many questions. How could parents, especially a former police officer who swore an oath to uphold the law, help their son cover up such a heinous crime? How could they drive around town with body parts in their car, go shopping at Costco, and act like nothing was wrong? And what about Ashley? She believed in second chances. She believed there was good in everyone. That beautiful quality, that ability to see the best in people, is what ultimately cost her her life. Christine Young lost her only daughter in the most horrific way imaginable. Parts of Ashley's body have never been found. Her head, her hands, her feet, they're still out there somewhere, and Christine will never have complete closure. She'll never be able to properly lay her daughter to rest in full. All she has are voicemails and videos that she plays over and over just to hear Ashley's voice, just to hear her laugh. So let me ask you this. Do you think Jared's sentence was justice? Do you think 100 to 200 years is enough for what he did? What about the parents? Do you think they got what they deserved for helping cover up this crime? Leave your thoughts in the comments below because I really want to know what you think about this case. And if you made it this far in the video, thank you for watching. This was a tough story to tell, and I know it was a tough story to hear. But it's important that we remember Ashley Young. It's important that we remember her spirit, her kindness, her belief in the good in people. That's the legacy she left behind, and no monster like Jared Chance can ever take that away. If this is your first time watching one of my videos, please hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss a case. And if you've been watching for a while, thank you for your continued support. Hit that like button, share this video, and let's make sure Ashley's story is never forgotten. Until next time, stay safe out there, and remember, trust your instincts. If something feels wrong, it probably is. I'll see you in the next video.